The DIESOL podcast,
Developing innovation in English as a second or other language.
episode 93, interview with Clare Kaneko, president of JALT.
Welcome to DIESOL. This is episode 93, and we are your hosts. I'm Brent Warner.
And I'm still Ishel Reyes.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's the end of the year, getting closer to wrapping up. How about you? How's
Yeah,
Japan?
it is great, and we're finally talking a little bit about Japan today on the episode. So it's
Yeah.
I've been here for a few months now, and we haven't quite. I mean, we mentioned it, but this will be a dive into some of the English language teaching stuff that's going on around Japan, and so. Today we're jumping into JALT, the Japan Association for Language Teaching, right? I want to make sure that I get the phrasing right. I always want to say Japanese, right? But it's
I know
Japan
I never
Association
want to
for
say
Language.
Japanese.
I know. So upcoming is the conference, the big conference, the 49th annual conference for language teaching and learning. And we've got the president of JALT here with us today. So Clare Kaneko, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm really good actually. I'm really glad to be here to talk about JALT and to let other people know that maybe haven't heard of it. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
So I want to make sure that people know about the conference itself. So I'm just a couple of details. So it's coming up on shortly after this episode. So if you listen to this and want to still get a ticket, you might be able to do that. I'm not sure if you can get a hotel room nearby, but it's funny because you guys were sending out emails early on. You're like, get a hotel room right now, get a hotel room right now, because there's other events happening in the city, I guess. Is that what's going on?
Yes, there is a marathon happening around the same time, but because it's really good access links from Akihabara, there's an express train that goes all the way through. Anything on that train line where there is a hotel could be a stopping point. So there are options, just not right next to the venue.
Yeah. Okay. So it's in Tsukuba in Ibaraki in Japan, of course, which is kind of outside of Tokyo. For me, I'm kind of lucky because Tsukuba is where my in-laws live, and so I didn't have to worry about the hotel conversation. I'll be staying with the family, but yeah, so coming up November 24th to the 27th, and the theme is growth mindset in language education. So Claire, today we kind of wanted to talk about two different sections. So we wanted to kind of talk about JALT as an organization, and then we also wanted to talk about the conference itself. And so we'll kind of keep it thematically in those two areas. But First, I just what when you hear JALT or when you say JALT, what does it mean to you? What do you think of, and how do you try to communicate it to people?
There, I think we need to also remember there are a lot of language organizations within Japan. To start off with, it's not something that's just isolated to JALT. So for me, when I think of JALT, in order to differentiate between our organization and perhaps the other language organizations, is that I see a lot of familiar faces because a lot of the other organizations are heavily based on Japanese teachers of English education, whereas for many foreign teachers of English and even other languages such as German as well, because we do have those members in our organization, without Japanese ability, it can be very difficult to function in some of those other organizations. So it gives a space for those teachers who are, perhaps native speakers of English or who are very confident in speaking English, to have a space where they can come together and share their ideas. And also there's a cultural aspect, I guess, as well, because as a outsider coming into Japan, our education style and the way that we were involved in education of our own can be very different to the Japanese style. And it can be a little challenging, perhaps is the right word, to go into a Japanese organization and pick up their style when that's something you haven't experienced yourself or that you haven't studied in your studies of education. So
Right.
for me, it's a great place to have like-minded people come together, not only just to share their wonderful ideas about education and teaching within Japan, but also there is a social element as well, which, you know, helps some of us perhaps who are a little bit more isolated in some areas of the country to have some interaction with some great people.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'll say one of the first, when I first started teaching in Japan, I guess it was like, I want to say 18 years ago or more. When I first came as a teacher and got my first job, I didn't know about JALT, and it existed and it was pretty powerful, but I didn't even realize the concept of professional organizations were around, like even in the States. I just was like, oh, okay, well, I'm teaching. And which well, we'll get into that later, but the you know, it would have been really useful to me to have that, because I struggled a lot with it. My first job was teaching at an elementary school kind of out in the countryside, and I was what they called an ALT, the assistant language teacher. And so there was the primary Japanese teacher who was the English teacher, and then there was me, who was the assistant, who was the native English speaker. But I really struggled with her pedagogy and her approaches to teaching the students. And I'm like, and it was very much like grammar translation model and you know, direct translation, and just tons of choral repetition and repeat after me. And I'm like, you know, I was like getting crushed because I didn't have the independence to say, hey, let's try these other types of activities or these types of things. And I didn't have any methodologies or ways to approach that conversation. And I get the feeling like, oh, if I'd known that there was an organization that kind of helps with those conversations as well. I mean, it's not everything, it's just one part. Like, hey, if you're a new teacher, you know, there's cultural aspects you need to start understanding here as well. And so it's really important to recognize, even if you're listening from outside of Japan or wherever, there's probably an organization that helps in your local context, that can kind of bring you up to speed on the things that you need to know and be aware of.
Yeah, I would agree totally. I mean, I came as well as one of those elementary school teachers or on the JET program, which is a, you know, a very common way for a lot of foreigners to start teaching English in Japan. And of course, I didn't know about the organ. It existed when I was here, but I didn't know about it because, you know, it has been seen for some time as an organization that targets universities and college education, which is actually not true. We do have a lot of work within the young learners as well, and that's a separate part actually of our conference. There is a young learner section where the presentations and information is concentrated in one area. So if that is what your focus is, then you can, you know, have enough sessions to complete the whole weekend just attending young learners sessions.
So, Claire and Brent mentioned how, you know, it's hard to I guess, I don't know if it's because you're younger, you know, when you're younger, you're not thinking about these organizations, but how do you maybe attract more members? Because the organization's been around quite a while, and how do you maintain the membership? I know that's hard for an organization.
It is very hard, and we're not going to lie, you know, COVID didn't help us. And I don't think we're the only organization where it had an impact. And since COVID and inflation, especially in Japan, joining an organization and having an annual fee is also something that can, you know, be one of the first things that you're going to remove from your budget if it becomes tight. So we do a couple of different things. Obviously, we're always trying to look for new ways to entice members. There are always, I guess it would help if I explained the structure of JALT a bit, because it's going to sort of work into the question that you just had. So JALT is a national organization, but within JALT, we then have local chapters and we have special interest groups. So I'm going to leave the special interest groups on the side for a second and talk about the chapters. So the chapters are usually regional, and usually each prefecture in Japan has a chapter, not all, and some of them are amalgamated. We have some small prefectures, and there are not a lot of universities, so therefore the base of membership is going to be smaller. And what a lot of these chapters do will actually reach out by various different ways, by putting an event on and getting people in to learn about the organization. One of those is to reach out to the assistant language teachers. Now, these are usually on the JET program, which is the Japan English Teaching Program, which brings foreigners in from overseas. Another company like that is sort of Interact, and they bring teachers in. They're all these organizations, but obviously they don't tell their staff about, they don't tell their employees, hey, if you're really interested in knowing more or improving yourself, how about this? They don't do that. So we have to put the word out. And I think there are almost every chapter, I can't say for sure, but most chapters have at least one ALT somehow involved as a member. And we often ask that ALT to reach out to the other ALTs because they have that network set up, and say, hey, we've got this event coming up, and it's free for you to come for the first time. So bring them in and see if it's something they're interested in. I actually had an event here in Niigata a couple of years ago, and it was our biggest attended event. And it was an event on bilingualism and raising bilingual children in Japan. And so we got this other group of people that had never thought about coming because it was all about language teaching. But now we were talking about bilingualism. There were a lot of people wanting to know, oh, how do I, make sure my child is raised bilingual and these sorts of things, which also feed into language teaching as well. But it also helped us to, get the JALT name out, and social events, Westerners and, my culture, I want to say my culture, obviously of people going out and having, parties and meeting down at the pub. This sort of event was normal in my life back in Australia, whereas coming to Japan, that doesn't happen. So we were, JALT can provide sometimes these events to bring people together socially to then introduce the organization. So we do try, and we're still trying. It's a never-ending story.
It's hard. Brent and I were part of an organization in California when we both lived there, but we definitely know how hard it is to get teachers new teachers, and then also to get them excited. So I'm also wondering, for those teachers who come back after one of your events, what are the areas, as you said, one area you found out was bilingualism, but what other avenues, or what else does JALT do to support their professional development for members?
So the chapters will often put on different events with different themes. They will either do this on their own, or they can work with the special interest groups that we have, because not everybody is interested in the same type of education. Everyone has their own interest in what they like to do and what they want to focus on. And I think one of the strong points of JALT is that at the moment, I think it's 32 different special interest groups that we have, which is huge.
That's a lot.
It is
That's
a lot. That is a lot. Some of the new ones are things like the art research and teaching, where we actually have some amazing artists within the organization, but now they have a place to come together and talk about what they do and how they use art in their education or their teaching. We have obviously some of the bigger ones like the computer assisted language learning. That group is huge. But when ChatGPT sort of became in everyone's mind, it actually started for us around November in 2022, which is when it all went off. And in Japan, where I work at my university, no one even knew about it. No one was talking about it until the new year hit, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, have you heard about Chat? But this group had already been talking about it since November, since it came out, and people were already starting to research it. People were already telling others how it could be used in language education. So I think we're really lucky that we get to often be at the start of a lot of things, because we have these special interest groups, and if something new happens or something comes out, then they're ready to attack it and to share with the rest of us what's going on. So it does sort of get these new people interested, and there's something for everyone, which is really, really good. And I'm actually one of my favorite, even though I'm not a part of it, is that we have other languages as well in JALT. So it's not 100% English language focused. So I love going to the conferences or events and seeing, some well-known French teachers or some German teachers. And I like that it's more global that way. So yeah, there is a place for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. And it makes it, and it sounds like that those are some of the different ways that it's like, you can, with those interest groups, it makes it easier to kind of stay on top of trends or stay with, like whatever people are interested in. There's a place to get that conversation started. And then is that how it works? Then that kind of rises up through the interest groups or through and then into the larger organization, and spread is kind of like a fountain, goes up from the bottom and then spreads back out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, because I didn't know about ChatGPT until someone else who, is interested in that sort of brought it forward. And I have an IT background myself, but I hadn't been looking for it. It wasn't on my radar. But obviously those that have these interests, it's going to be on their radar. And so that's where it starts at the bottom. They pick it up and then they develop it with perhaps some of the others that are interested, like-minded. And then that fountain effect happens. And that's when you start having those people present, perhaps at events with chapters, either online or in person, and the word gets spread even further. And at the events, I know the events that I attend, my local events, it's very comfortable and it's very accessible to talk with the presenter and to ask them for more information. Some of the presenters that we have in JALT are internationally recognized. And yet they will come to your prefecture and give a presentation on ChatGPT. So the level of, some of the presentations you have access to is just phenomenal. So I'm really glad that we had our ChatGPT event.
Yeah. So we kind of, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here, because you'd mentioned the pandemic and kind of, I think we're just at a year since Japan opened back up. Is that right? So officially.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell with this country, because people, even when it opens up, it doesn't open up.
Yeah. I know when I left last year, I think they had just officially started, which was sometime in, May?
Yes, May was I think the official month sort of that things opened up. Yeah.
So I guess we're just a little bit here on how that changed the organization. I think, because JALT is already, if you're spread across the whole country, right? Like the world went to Zoom at this point, and so it's a lot easier to meet up with people from different areas. But I don't know if you guys were online kind of and mixing it up before that or not. And all the work that you have to do, it seems, I've been in a couple of the meetings so far, and it seems like people are pretty well connected regardless of where they are. And I was just interested to see a little bit about how, in the context of the pandemic, how the organization has changed and made adaptations.
That's a good question. I think we were, like a lot of people and organizations and places, really caught off guard when the pandemic hit. And this is also for education within the school system in Japan. That was even worse than our organization in the way that things were dealt with. So I think we were reasonably lucky, and because we have such a big base of members, there obviously were people in the organization that already had a lot of IT experience, that already knew about, not Zoom as such, because that just sort of went, and skyrocketed, but they had experience doing something similar. And they were able to then teach others within the organization how to use it, how to do it, and how to move forward. So I was somewhat involved with the board of directors before COVID, and I would attend 3 times a year in person a meeting. And those that were not invited in person were either on Skype or they were just on speakerphone. So we did have some interaction with the Skype, but we certainly didn't have things like webcam set up properly, you know, or speakers that could, you know, deal with everybody in the room. It was sort of, you know, if you want to speak, come up to the microphone that's on this phone. And people in the room couldn't be heard. So we did change that. We had to invest money in some tech equipment, things like the owl that we have. I don't know if you know about an owl. It's a expensive piece of equipment, unfortunately, but it is a 360-degree camera.
Oh yeah.
That also includes a microphone and speaker. So you can set it up in a room and somebody can actually control the camera. It's not always 360. They can focus it and spotlight on a presenter.
It pivots around and moves. Okay, yeah.
Well, it's actually inbuilt, so it doesn't move at all.
Oh, so you just point it to. Okay,
yeah, and then you there is like a remote. So things like this we had to obviously invest in. It's going to cost money. Zoom accounts cost money as well. But I think because of having people that already were involved with IT and getting their advice, it did make the move a little bit easier, which I think caught a lot of schools in Japan off guard because they don't have those kinds of people. And it's just really weird. Like I was so shocked because I gave a Zoom session to my daughter's class because I knew what Zoom was. I did a practice session. But we've since, you know, obviously we're continuing to use these new skill sets and tools that we've obviously learned from the pandemic. For example, the executive board meeting before the pandemic was 100% in person. So if you were a president of a chapter or a chair of a SIG, we asked you to come to a physical location for 2 days to attend an event. Not an event, but a meeting. And that's now changed where it's hybrid, 100% hybrid. So if you're unable to attend in person or you would prefer just not to attend in person, if your child has a birthday party at, you know, Saturday night, then you can still go to that without having to attend, which is great. You know, it gives people the option then of either coming or staying home. And personally, I do like the interaction that happens in those coffee break moments or in walking from the meeting to the hotel. I don't think we can, you know, quantify just how useful those snippets of time are in our development as people and as teachers and as educators, because the meeting is so focused on what is actually going on that coming together also to see how people are going and see how their research is moving or whatever it is, those snippets of time are just invaluable to me. And so that's why I like to go in person. So, but we are using the IT, the stuff that we learn, and also, you know, moving forward as to how do we integrate that even more, or what do we take away now? So one of the things, we haven't talked about the conference because that's the next section. And
I was just about to ask you about the conference.
I can lead you into that. I'll do a transition. So I'll lead you into the conference.
Perfect.
So obviously with the, you know, transition between pre-COVID, COVID, and then post-COVID, we're now at this strange sort of part where we're like, okay, we've done fully online conferences in 2020 and 2021. We did a sort of hybrid, let's come back for the first time in November of 2022 in Fukuoka. Obviously, we're doing sort of a hybrid mix again this year for the conference. But moving forward, do we really want to be doing both for a conference? I don't know if you've ever had to set up a conference or organize a conference, but it's not an easy thing to do.
It is not easy.
It is not.
And I think
it's all volunteer work.
And even if you look at, for those of you who've ever done hybrid teaching, it is not easy to do hybrid teaching. It takes almost twice the amount of time for me anyway, because I'm giving instructions to students in the classroom and then having to give similar but different instructions to those online. So that just takes twice as the amount of time that it normally would. And then having to put students in breakout rooms that are online. Whereas in the classroom, I just, okay, talk to the person next to you. I don't have to physically do anything. So having a combination conference, which is both in person and online, or a hybrid version, can actually cause a lot more work for the conference team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions we have moving forward, is how much emphasis do we want to put on the online component, or do we separate that and make it its own thing? Do we have online as online and, you know, have people, for example, if it was in the summer holidays, you would be able to then have teachers who've gone back to their countries, either for study abroad because they have to take students, or for whatever reason they're not in the country and physically not able to attend, they could still then attend if it was 100% online conference. It is another conference though, so it still needs to, someone needs to prepare it, but it might just be an easier option somehow, but that is one of the decisions we have moving forward, certainly, is how do we move out of, you know, the COVID 100% online to, you know, what do we end up with in the end? So, yeah.
So speaking of the conference, this year's theme is growth mindset and language education. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little overview of what's happening, and then perhaps how is this one new compared to other conference themes in the past?
I think, you know, for most conferences, the theme is always something that fits in everybody. You know, you can't make a theme so specific that only one group of people will be able to attend, or, you know, it's only for you people who speak French. That's not going to work in Japan. So the growth mindset obviously is something, as an educator, that we have to always be open to the idea that we can improve ourselves. What we studied and what we learned is not something that necessarily will carry through until we retire at whatever age that may be, but that along the way we need to keep our minds open to either changes in education styles or things that are different, something that you may not have thought of before, but to always remember that you can learn something new that you can carry on with you into your teaching, however that might be. So we've had, I don't have the whole list of all of the themes from the past umpteen years. You can go onto the website and see what all of the themes are. But as I said, we do try to incorporate everyone in some way, shape or form, and not have anything too specific. Yeah, I don't choose the theme. That gets chosen by the actual committee itself. So, but I'm looking forward to it.
Sometimes through the years you cycle and you come back to the same idea, and maybe it's time to, you know, put it out there again, because every few years you have a whole new group and a new generation of teachers, or new members, etc. So at least that's what I notice over here with our organizations and putting events together.
I think, you know, the themes for the last couple of years have pretty much been involved with sort of change and
right,
you know,
right. It reflects what we're going through.
You know, which is great. You know, it reflects the times, obviously, you know, and this is one of the things I teach in one of my classes actually is, you know, culture obviously changes with time as things happening, and you know, the music that was probably produced in the last couple of years is going to be very different to the music that's going to come in the next couple of years, just because of the pandemic. You know, I'm glad watching TV programs in Japan. I don't think this happens so much in the US or Australia or other Western countries, is watching them change from obviously pre-COVID, where there was no safeguards in place, to then having these amazing safeguards, and then people in, you know, shows now wearing masks on their faces and
the clear mask,
panels between people and social distancing. It was amazing here when you watch the TV, you know, just the change. So I think that also reflects some of the conference themes that we have, especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic.
Yeah, that is something I notice is still happening in Japan. So like you'll still see people happily wearing masks or doing, you know, all these things, and those plexiglass dividers. And like I think in the States, a lot of the media has really tried to like skip that, it feels like. I mean, there's been little parts of it, you know, we see parts of it that kind of recognize it or point to it, but like really a lot of it is just trying to be like it somehow it's a little blip on the cultural radar in terms of what Hollywood is putting out. I don't know. I do think that is interesting. But anyways, let's come back to the conference here. So looking at that conference, there's lots of different sessions, tons of different things going on. But for you, Claire, in particular, is there anything that you're really looking forward to, or any of the couple of sessions that you're like, I got to get to that one, or possibly I'm too busy doing everything else. I'm not going to be able to get into any of these, but what are you looking forward to, or what would you tell people that are coming to they should try and check out?
Well, personally, I can't speak for anyone else but myself, obviously, because my interests are going to be very different to someone else that's sitting next to me. Me personally, one of my constraints this year will definitely be time where I am able to go to sessions and not able to go to sessions. But, you know, I'm an IT background person, not in education, just IT in business. So I'm always been interested in the Friday sessions, which is the special technology workshops that they have on. And there's quite a few of those actually that I would love to attend. And because my duties on Friday, I think, are a little bit less, then I might be able to attend a few of them. One of the other sessions I'm really looking forward to is our Kevin Cleary speaker, invited speaker, which is Melody Cook, who just happens to live in the same, you know, place as me, you know, probably about 20 minutes down the road. And the Kevin Cleary Award itself, the invited speaker, is something that is chosen by the president. I did have, you know, advice from others, because I didn't, you know, think that I was, you know, confident enough to have the responsibility solely on myself. And so while it is, you know, some people may see it as, you know, people who are starting in the organization and making a difference, there also is a place for those who are existing and have made a difference in JALT. And for a lot of us in the JALT community, if you know Melody Cook or know of Melody Cook, you know how much time and effort she has spent, especially with people who are new to the organization, and getting them involved and getting them the right tools that they need. So I'm looking forward to hearing about her journey, the Kevin Cleary. There is also sessions that are not presenter sessions. So I'm really lucky, and something that I attend every time I go, because I didn't know about it the first time, but the second time I attended the JALT conference, I found out was the Best of JALT, and it's called now the Michelle Steele Best of JALT. And this is where presenters who are recognized, so they've been voted as having a good presentation in the prefectures, the chapters that they've had. And I think it's important that we recognize people for their achievements, and I'm looking forward to helping out with that, because I get to stand up the front. But I'm not because I'm standing up the front, but because I think it's a really important part of JALT to recognize people who've done a good job. And that's something that, as a president, or at least as a person, I've always been, you know, conscious of, is making sure that you thank those who are helping and doing a good job. And yeah, that's what I like. So that's some of the things that I'm interested in going to.
Awesome. And can we jump just for 1 second back to the Fridays? I'm not sure how it works in JALT. Are those separate sessions, or are they included with the conference, or are they sometimes they do paid and sometimes they do inclusive? And I'm not sure how that setup works here.
Yes. Because of the position that I hold within JALT, for me it's a little bit different in terms of pricing. But on the website, if you have a look at the pricing, you can just pay for the Friday if that is what you would like to do. There are packages as well. I think it just depends for everyone as to what they're interested in seeing and how much time they have available. The actual listing of how all the pricing works and the different things are available on the website. So that's probably the best place to go. It just depends on the package. And as you said, sometimes it's included and sometimes it's not. So
there's lots of options, it sounds like.
Yeah, there are lots of options. Yes.
That's great because it lets people be flexible depending on what their schedule matches up.
Yes.
Not everybody can attend the whole, for the whole thing, but if you can stop by on a Friday, that's pretty good.
So, I mean, and then certainly if IT is your thing and you're not interested in perhaps the other stuff, you can just attend the IT sessions, the tech sessions on the Friday. Come get your fill, and then that's you.
Yeah. Claire, you mentioned earlier something that I think I missed the most about conferences during the pandemic and just events, the coffee breaks or the I don't know, when you're getting ready for your presentation in the lounge and there's a few other presenters there too, or you're waiting for a session, and how important that is to network with people, meet others. Do you have any stories of people either you've met during those breaks or connections you've made, or maybe perhaps that you've heard from other members of how they connected, and maybe ways that the conference itself has those built in? Most of my networking was not built in. It just happened, and I've made great friendships and because of it with other colleagues who are now I consider friends.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think the most, if for those that are actually in JALT members and have been around and know the story, but it was a meeting of two people at one of the JALT events that actually saved someone's life. So that I can't necessarily mention names because it's not necessarily a huge, big sort of thing, but a meeting of two people actually saved someone's life. So not at the JALT thing, it's something that happened afterwards. But then that's not even teaching related, the fact that happened, and we don't advertise that it's, hey, you come to JALT, save your life.
It's not a bad flyer.
But I mean, I think definitely when you're talking to people and you're finding out, if you attend an event, I know that there are people who have gone to a session that they're interested in, listened to the session, come out, gotten a hold of the speaker, and then said to them, hey, I really like what you're doing. I'm doing this. Can we collaborate on something? And I know that happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I had I was involved in sort of the mental aspect and students and special needs students. We were looking at doing that at our university. We went to a JALT conference. We attended a session that was presented by someone who was doing research in that area, and we cornered them afterwards. And we sat them down at a table and we had a list of questions for them and got their contact information and continued to do that afterwards. Yeah. But I also know that people make friendships, unrelated to the teaching style of it. And when you are, I sort of alluded to this earlier as well, when you are a foreigner in Japan,
I was going to say exactly.
It can be difficult to make connections with people. And I was actually reading an article about this week about even Japanese people. It's difficult for them to make connections because if you look at the friend groups that most Japanese people have, it's friend groups from junior high school or from high school, and the club activities that they did. I don't hear a lot about Japanese people who've made friends or have a friend circle after they become an adult and get into the working world. It just doesn't seem to exist. So as a foreigner who comes in after doing education in their home country and comes into the country as an adult, you got no chance then. So, at least providing, an educational experience, but hey, you can actually make friends at JALT as well. It does help.
I like that as a poster line too. You can actually make friends. All right, so Claire, just before we wrap up the conversation here, I did see one thing on I think the Instagram about accessibility, and I saw that the conference opened up this option for allowing. I mean, it blew my mind because it was like, oh, hey, if you have a caretaker, bring them in, and we're gonna cover it, and we're gonna make sure that they're taken care of. I was like, oh my god, talk about forward thinking. I've never, I mean, I'm a part of pretty forward thinking organizations. I've never even heard anyone talk about doing something like that. Can you share a little bit about that and just like how you're making sure that everything's accessible, and what steps you're taking to do those?
Sure. The one of the big things that JALT tries to do is to try and be at the forefront of a lot of those things. Also, even if you've never attended a JALT conference, the way that they separate the garbage and they recycle all of the garbage. Yes, I know Japan is an amazing country for doing that anyway, but we would still have the option of putting everything in one trash can and, throwing it out. But there is actually a group of people who go through not all of the garbage, but check the garbage and the trash to make sure that it has been separated into the right ways. The trash cans themselves are made out of cardboard so that we can recycle that as well. It's not plastic. The childcare is amazing, and I love seeing the group of kids that every now and then they'll be in a group and they'll walk past, and you go, "Oh, that's so cute." Because it does provide this option. Everyone has a different dynamic and family network, so I know that some, fathers perhaps look after the children at the weekend, and if they want to go to a conference and they have to take the children with them, that means that JALT can help. Or maybe you just want to give the wife a break and you can take the kids to JALT and you can get your fill, but that the kids can also be looked after as well. We just try as much as we can to provide for the community that we have, because we know that there are a lot of parents out there. One of our really amazing volunteer for the conference, she was 11 months pregnant last year when she was there looking after the VIP guests.
My goodness. That's commitment.
And she will be coming, I'm pretty sure she's coming this year with her 2 children, because the new one's nearly a year old now. So yeah. But I mean, even just that, and that connects to the last point about, making these friendships and connections. And we all know that she was pregnant last year, and she's going to be bringing her nearly 1-year-old, and everyone's going to be, oh my gosh, last year you were pregnant, and now but that space is available, so we know she's going to attend because she has that option, that she can bring her kids with her. So
love it. There's so much going on here. So anyone who's looking into it or wanting to see information, jalt.org. And November, this episode's coming out on a Monday just before, but November 24th. And Ishel, you and I will do a wrap-up conversation on the next episode after this too. We'll kind of cover what happened because I'm going to be there and I'm excited to be there, and Claire, to meet you in person and everything.
Yeah, so cool. Maybe Jose will go, one of our previous interviewees.
Yeah.
Now, so maybe he'll be there. He's teaching. So
awesome.
All right, it is time for our fun finds. And I know many of you are shopping for a gift to give somebody. This time I have a book. It's called Light in Gaza, Writings Born of Fire, and it's an anthology featuring work by several Palestinian writers who imagine a future of peace. And for a limited time, you can actually download the book for free. So the digital book, but you can go purchase a book, give it to somebody. It's a good read.
Awesome.
Brent, what do you have?
Mine is an expensive one this time. So Claire
last time was expensive. You're just made of money. I don't know, but I think it was pricey.
I don't well this one's this one, okay, so anyways, and I haven't bought it yet, but Claire was talking about those 360-degree cameras, and I'm looking at getting I have one of the first 360-degree like personal portable cameras, the Insta360, but it's kind of the lenses are changing colors and they're not quite lining up very well. And the new one, that's the Insta360 X3, I saw on YouTube someone figured out a way to turn it into a dash cam, and so you can actually just put it up on the dash of your car and run it on like a 10-minute or 15-minute loop or whatever it is. And so while my wife and I were driving around on our last driving cycle, we saw a bear in Gifu, we saw deer, we saw monkeys, we saw all these things, and we're like trying to like rip out the camera and take pictures.
I support this fun find.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, we could have it as a dash cam, and it's actually like a pretty cool, like fun use, like for traveling and taking pictures and everything. So it's pretty expensive, but right now they're doing like the Black Friday sale thing, and they're doing giveaways together with it. And so I figured if I'm going to put in a couple $100s into a dash cam, I might as well just put a little bit more and get something that I can take off the dash and use in all sorts of settings. And so I'm looking pretty seriously at the Insta360 X3.
Very cool.
Claire, do you have a fun find?
Yeah, so going back to the Christmas presents, for the last few years, I've wanted to have a present that I have a husband and 3 children, so there's 5 of us in the family, and I've always been looking in the last few years for a present that we can all have, not a shared present, but one present that's the same for everybody. So the first year I started with personalized keychains, with your initial on it. The next year I did a calendar, and we've done pajamas as well. And this year I was trying to figure out what to get, and I ended up buying winter hats in different colors for everyone. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens, because I'm not going to put names on any of the hats. They all are the same, they're just different colors, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when people open a hat, and if they don't like the color, what they're going to do. Are they going to swap it, or are they going to keep it, or what? It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
When you say winter hat, are you talking about like the floppy ears, or like the knit caps, or what style of hats are these? Or is it a secret?
Because it's right behind me.
I don't want your family to
ball at the top.
It's a knit, yeah, on the outside, but it does cover the ears a little. I'm not sure how much it's going to cover them, but because where I live in Niigata, it is so windy here, so you really do appreciate a little bit of cover over the ears. Yeah.
I just bought myself one the other day, and I'm like, or yesterday actually, because I was like, oh, it's starting to get too cold for a baseball cap. And so awesome.
All right, we are on YouTube. Share the show, buy us a coffee, support us through Patreon, leave a review, leave a comment. We're getting a lot of comments on YouTube, so we'll answer. We do the best to answer. If you give us a shout out, you could win a one-of-a-kind DIESOL pen.
All right. And show notes, transcript for the episodes, everything is up at diesel.org. This episode will be diesel.org/93, the number 93. And of course, you can listen to us at VoiceEd Canada, voiced.ca. I am on most of the socials at Brent G. Warner.
And I'm on most of the socials at Pixie_Pixie. That's IXY_PIXY.
And Claire, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how could they find you?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. I will give you guys a contact for that. And then you can put it in the show notes. So that's the easiest. Perfect. Look at the show notes. It'll be there somewhere.
Awesome.
In Japanese, thank you is arigatou gozaimasu. Arigatou gozaimasu for tuning into the DIESOL podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I'm waving at nobody.
I'm waving back.